I'm sitting here playing around with this circuit. You can barely see it there. I had this vision of what I think the Amman brothers did. What's going on is I'm running the simulator at longer and longer durations. I'm up to something like 10 or 100 million seconds. And it's giving me diminishing returns, just like a normal thermodynamic loss-oriented circuit, obeying the policy of physics. It has nothing to do with the laws of physics. It's the policy. Physics is a political party, all right? You're either a communist because you don't believe in them, or you're a liberal, whatever, or you're a redneck because you support the party line. Now, the reason why I say this is because when simulators are set up, I understand now why they choose matrix algebra as their methodology of choice for approximating the results of a simulation run. It's because they expect convergence, they want convergence, and anything that diverges is against the so-called policy of physics. Because as I've explained in a previous video, it dawned on me what divergence and convergence, or what divergence means. It means that, when you have an oscillating waveform, you've got a maximum and you've got a minimum. And they are looking forward to those maximums and minimums coming closer and closer together. Diminishing returns. Everything goes to zero. Baseline. Midline is your midline. They're not looking for the maximums to go higher and the minimums to go lower, the peaks and the troughs, to move away from the midline further and further apart. To them, that means there's something wrong. There's nothing wrong. It means you're getting an abundance of energy. But they classify it as wrong, and so they use matrix algebra to cut corners on the presumption that you are going to be a good little bunny and you're going to only make circuit simulations that go to diminishing returns, namely zero. Namely, the peaks get smaller and smaller and the troughs get higher and higher, and everything becomes zero. That's what they're expecting, and anything else is verboten because it's not going to compute, This does not compute, this does not compute. They expect us to be little robots and tote the party line. This is what I'm seeing, and I'm realizing why simulators have a limitation built into them. A policy that's across the entire piece of software. If they use matrix algebra, you're sunk. You can forget it. You're not going to find out what you want to find out. And, that just adds insult to the injury that when I tried to do an electrostatic parametric excitation in a capacitor by varying the parameter of the capacitance of that capacitor up and down in microcap, I was forbidden to do so. Now in LT Spice you can get away with it, but LT Spice, they have a different way of controlling you. There they require, it's not an option like microcap, they require that you ground the sucker all over the place so that you don't get a buildup of voltage occurring anywhere. Well, gee, duh, that's overunity. So they're preventing overunity every which way they can. But in each one, they do it a little differently. Now, in microcap, they give you the option of bringing up or flagging the error, they call it an error, of floating nodes. Floating nodes means a buildup of voltage. Duh, overunity. Duh. Here, they don't do that. The built-in software piece is matrix is singular. Now, in Paul Fosted's simulator, he calls it convergence failure. Same thing. Yet I've managed to get around it because I monkeyed with his software. Or, even when I didn't monkey with it, before I monkeyed with it, I showed him examples of what I was doing and say, look, what do you think of this? Hey, that's weird, that doesn't look right. And he still can't prevent it. He refuses to prevent it. I guess because it would be too difficult, maybe too time-consuming, because his simulator is an ongoing thing. It runs while you're looking at it. It could be that he's hampered. He's got his hands tied behind his back. He can only do so much. And so he doesn't put series resistance in his coils, nor does he put equivalent series resistance in his capacitors, probably because he can't. Or else he would have done so by now. All the Berkeley Spice has it. Come on, this guy is a graduate of Cambridge or something. Why on earth would he leave that out? I don't know, unless there's a very good reason. But it's a hole, an oversight, or a hole that allows for overunity so readily. People have said to me, oh, it's so easy with Paul Fawcett Simulator. I just do this and that. All I have to do is change the parameter of one thing, like a capacitor, up and down, and I get overunity. Well, duh, it's parametric excitation, duh. So I'm trying to come up with a solid state device that's buildable, regulatable, and I keep thinking, oh, I've got it now. I've got the Amon Brothers secret. The only problem is, in microcap, it gives me diminishing returns. In Paul Fawcett Simulator, it gives me an explosion of non-infinite matrix in less time than you can shake a fist at. One thing this Amon Brothers concept that I'm doing in microcap does do is it gives me voltage and current is out of phase by 180 degrees. Well, one waveform. There's a complex of waveforms. See, this is what it looks like in Paul Fawcett Simulator. I made it my desktop. I love it so much. It's about the only time I'll ever be successful. Let's see. Let me show you what I came up with. So this is the waveform at, I think it's 1,000,000 seconds. Is it 1,000,000 or is it 10,000? It's very fascinating when you start to make things go longer and longer. 10,000 seconds. And I discovered this phenomenon. Now I remember this phenomenon, this waveform in Paul Fawcett Simulator means the current and the voltage is out of step by 180 degrees. And of course, we want that if we want to synthesize electricity. Now, these nodes are located at 4.5 kiloseconds and 7.5 kiloseconds, and this is the amperage. Interestingly, remember those numbers, 4.5 kiloseconds and 7.5 kiloseconds. That's the amperage. Then if we go over to, no, not the watts. Oh, let's forget the watts. The voltage. The nodal points is 3 kiloseconds, 6 kiloseconds, and 9 kiloseconds. That means the nodal points of these little blobs undergoing the amperage is right in the middle. These things are 180 degrees apart. Now, these are not waves per se. These are undulating peaks and troughs of waves, in which the peaks undulate up and down, and the troughs undulate up and down. It's a beat frequency that's making this happen. Regardless, when I see a beat frequency that's 180 degrees voltage out of phase with the current version of the beat frequency, that's telling me that I'm getting a condition I want to get. Now, when I look at the sine wave, or excuse me, when I look at the watts, I get a neat little sine wave whose wavelength is 3,000 seconds long. So the hertz is 333 1/3 microhertz. Isn't that sweet? It's a very long wavelength there. We're dealing with weirdness here. And this is the Amon Brothers. So I'm beginning to wonder, is the Amon Brothers doing essentially what Nathan Stubblefield did? If you read his patent and you read the stories on, because the patent doesn't tell the whole story, he planted he called it an earth battery, but it's kind of something else. He would plant it, he found the best way to use it is to plant it under the roots of an old oak tree and wait a year. That tells me the roots, tannic acid, an oak tree creates tannic acid in the roots to break down the rocky mineral matter to release the minerals into the soil so it can absorb the minerals. That's how plants get minerals from the soil. They create acidity that they exude out of their root hairs and out of their roots to dissolve the mineral matter that's locked up in the soil. And the tannic acid would have eaten away at the earth battery, leaving a deposition of the formation of the earth battery with a certain structure, but it would not be the original earth battery. It would be an oxidized version, or maybe let's say an acidified version, a dissolved version. It would have done something to it, definitely, because it was made out of wood and copper and iron. And the funny thing was, he never sheathed his iron wire. He left it bare, and he sheathed his copper wire with cotton sleeves. Now, whether or not he coated the cotton sleeves with a coating to insulate them or not, I don't know. But this was this was prior to his winding the coil. But he used both types of wire, copper sheathed with cotton sleeves and bare iron. Now that's Oliver Heaviside right off the bat there. So he's using very ancient techniques to make sure that the electromagnetic field does not dissipate and it keeps pace with the electrostatic field. But he puts it under the roots of an old oak tree for a year. What do you think it's doing down? I'm wondering what it's doing down there. These are very old techniques, old school techniques that they're not looking for instantaneous results like we do. We want it yesterday. We want instant on power from a clean start, from a zero position of no energy. You don't do that in the old school. You got to let things cure, like, making wine or something. You got to wait years or something, and then when you get your results, it's probably so stable that you don't get the kind of reaction that I've been getting, because I've been thinking in today's mentality of instantaneous results. Yeah, it explodes in my face in a picosecond, and how the hell am I supposed to regulate that to get 345 volts and 200 amps for surge speed or acceleration speed up a hill versus 50 or 60 amps for cruising speed on the freeway? No way am I going to be able to run an EV that way. So what the Amon brothers did was something I think more along the lines of the Nathan Stubblefield approach and the Oliver Heaviside approach. Very old school, very patience-oriented. And there's got to be a way of looking at this in terms of patience. Now, simulators are not geared for patience. They're geared for quick and dirty method, quick and slick. And so they use matrix algebra on the premise that everything is diminishing returns, so you're going to throw away your battery or have to recharge it one way or another, because you're not going to get free energy out of us, dildo. You're not going to figure that one out. I mean, dingbat. I mean, what other kind of cuss word can I think of to exemplify my embarrassment of assuming I can use a simulator for something it was not intended to be used. I've always known this, but it's becoming very clear to me that I'm screwed. So then we have to turn to people like William Line quoting Nikola Tesla: for every 200 pounds of iron added to his special generator, 1 horsepower is increased of the output. It's like, okay, you're not going to find that in a simulator telling you that. It's not going to happen in this week. I mean, I did do a simulation that I thought was something like 2 billion coupling coefficient, and I thought I was simulating that quotation of William Line's quotation of Nikola Tesla, but what do I know? I just had this vision that I thought this is how they did it, and I really don't know how they did it because I can't confirm it from the simulator, and I'm probably not going to be able to. So it may be that I may just have to start building stuff. Hey, this is simple stuff. It can't be complicated, but I'd probably have to do it the old school way, in which I'd have to use either vacuum tubes for the capacitors, certainly use borax electrolyte solution for the diodes, and for the grounding ports, do I use copper spheres? Because there may be a property here about copper spheres that I'm overlooking. Oh, of course. I forgot about that. The spark in the center. There doesn't have to be a spark to be a spark, necessarily. You can have ionization, and that's a pre-spark condition. And you've already got, because the SPICE model for a spark gap is actually a source of energy. That's right. Okay, back to the drawing board.